Hey guys, how are all of you beautiful people? Hope all of you are doing great. And yes, this is the next part of my Pokemon world. We're the story following the birth of the strongest trainer to ever walk the planet. Going region by region, league by league, champion by champion in order to chase after his ever-fleeting sense of accomplishment. Fans scream out his name every time he enters the arena, opponents forfeit when they meet his gaze, his combat style, unforgiving to even the smallest of mistakes. Soaring above the sky itself, his figure fades from the eyes of all those who he has defeated, never to catch up. So let's start without any delay. Everyone watched on as Mewtwo disappeared from view before silence descended on the now empty battlefield. Well, now ain't that a shame? Rex said with a slight smile. Giovanni couldn't help but smile as well before nodding. Truly, such a shame. But I can't give you the badge without actually defeating any of my Pokemon. So here, I'll send out another one of my own and we can resume. Giovanni proposed. Rex nodded and Giovanni sent in Nidoqueen, who was instantly defeated with a single bullet punch to the face. It was heavily nerfed so that the opponent didn't die in a single hit. The battle wasn't actually a battle but simply a process. It was never about the badge and the two sides knew that. The winner is Rex, the challenger, with a KO. The grunt announced before swiping down with the red flag. The horn sounded in a lower tone to signal that the match was over. Rex and Giovanni walked to the middle and shook hands. I hope your plan works out, Giovanni said with a smile. Don't worry, there will be no issue. In any case, I appreciate you going along with my request. I'll have Gaia send you the company blueprint. I have already bought the building that will serve as our headquarters. Giovanni raised an eyebrow out of curiosity. May I inquire as to where it's located? Right here in Viridian City. You have contacts, so it will make it that much more convenient. You must have heard about the new skyscraper being built on 13th Street, right? Giovanni's eyes widened. You were the one who bought that thing. Holy shit, Rex. That's amazing. It's prime real estate located in the middle of the shopping district of the most popular city in the region. He exclaimed in surprise. Rex smiled slightly. That's why I bought it. Make sure to run it properly. Everything has already been renovated. So you can start moving your people there. Salaries will be left to your discretion, just make sure to send them to Gaia for a review before we make them official. How will I contact Gaia? Ding. Giovanni's phone went off, which prompted Giovanni's face to change from curiosity to shock as he quickly glanced at the cameras before gazing down at his phone. Hello, new partner. My name is Gaia, as you have already been made aware of. You can just send the results to this number and a response will be given to you within the hour. If you have any questions, please use this number. I am always available 24 hours a day. I hope we can have a happy cooperation. From Gaia. Holy shit, Rex, who is this person? A robot. He said jokingly. If only he saw Rex's lips twitch slightly at the mention of the word. Who knew he could make such accurate jokes? Gaia said with a chuckle. Very true. Don't give it much thought, just know that Gaia is dependable. Their word is as good as mine. Anyway, you will also get a message detailing the hiring of staff for specific roles for each company. I want everything to be set up so the instant I win the league, the company goes public, and we open the doors. Can you do that? Giovanni slapped Rex's shoulder. Relax, kiddo, I'm not some amateur. I did run a business prior to our meeting. I can make my way around the management position. Everything will be made ready the way you want it to be. I just hope I can input my ideas freely. he said cautiously. Rex smiled and nodded. Sure, if you have any ideas, send Gaia or me a message detailing your proposition. If it's feasible, we can make it a reality. Now, badge. Rex said, extending out his hand expectantly. Giovanni grinned before reaching into his inner suit jacket pocket and pulling out the Earth badge, symbolizing the completion of not only this gym but his journey through the Kanto region. It was now time to relax, build his company and wait for the league to start in 2 months. Muta would take a month before sending out the invitations to the strong trainers. That's when the plan would start. There truly wasn't much to do anymore except train. He took the badge and carefully placed it into his badge case that now had a set of 8 different badges, all symbolizing the long journey he had been through this year. From his reincarnation to now. It was an arduous but thrilling journey. As he left the gym, he found Elisa and the twins waiting for him. They simply stared at him as he walked towards them. Elisa had a beautiful smile on her face as her eyes glowed with excitement and happiness. Monica was fidgeting nervously as she stared at Rex, while Jessica was squinting like always with a silent but thoughtful expression. Now that I have completed my gym badges, I only have the league in 2 months. So, at this time, Elisa and I will take you to get your Pokemon. But it has to be by yourselves. All I will be doing is ensuring your safety. Is that okay with you two? He asked. Monica and Jessica reverted to their childish, spoiled selves as they jumped up in excitement before hugging Rex tightly. Rex was caught off guard and couldn't react to their sudden attack. He looked for Elisa with the intention of helping him out, but found her sealing his lips with hers in a quick but passionate kiss before pulling away. That is for completing your goal. Well done, Rex. You have worked hard. Rex smiled happily and embraced her. Hey! Stop being so mushy, you'll make us puke. And stop hugging, you're squishing me. Monica shouted from below, causing the couple to laugh for a moment before separating. The twins emerged with their hair in a mess as they glared at the duo. Rex didn't back down. You have something to say? Go on, but be careful, I might just catch a cold and I won't be able to help you get your Pokemon. He said with a playful smile before giving a fake cough. This prompted Elisa's giggles, but to Jessica and Monica, his words were the equivalent of a death threat. Monica laughed through her teeth as she punched Rex on the arm playfully. Our future brother-in-law wouldn't catch a cold so easily, right? Rex choked on his saliva when he heard her words and Elisa's cheeks flushed red. That's for the future, Monica. Elisa chided meekly with an embarrassed expression. Rex simply wanted to escape this awkward situation. The rest of the day went by rather quickly after that. Waking up in the morning no longer having anything to worry about or a gym to beat left Rex with an odd sense of emptiness. As if something was missing. But the thought was short-lived before being pushed to the back of his head due to the loud pounding coming from his door. The sound was so loud that it made him jump, causing the toothpaste to fly everywhere on his face. Black lines made their way onto his forehead as he frowned at himself in the mirror. Son of a bitch. Who the hell is knocking so early in the morning? He bellowed between heavy steps before swinging the door wide open, only to see 2 police officers. Mainly Jenny and one of her assistants. We are sorry to disturb you like this, Mr. Pierce, but we have some questions we would like to ask you about. Is it okay if we come in? Jenny asked sternly. This only caused Rex to frown even harder. What the fuck is going on? He asked himself. You are under investigation and are a suspect regarding the murder of that Jessie girl who tried to kill you. Additionally, you are about to be questioned about the robbery we committed a month ago. They have no solid proof though and are most likely trying to rattle you enough in order to get you to spill the beans. Gaia announced to Rex's surprise. I thought you covered it up, they shouldn't have any digital evidence. They don't, but they have 2 eyewitnesses that links you to Jess's murder. That being a couple that saw you together with her the night she died. They were at the restaurant. As for the robbery, the guard on duty that day reported it an hour after you left. Nothing was done at that moment because they were trying to verify whether it was a coincidence or not. They have already questioned everyone else that was there that day, and this must be a simple check. So, all in all, you are safe as long as you show no signs of being worried, nervous or anything of the sort. Gaia informed. Rex finally understood and couldn't help but be surprised that it took them this long to get on to him about the murder. He wasn't the least bit worried about either problem and even less so concerning the bank robbery. They had no proof, hell, they didn't even have a lead telling them he was the person responsible. Please, do come in, he answered casually while walking back in before heading to the kitchen. Jenny and her partner sat down at the kitchen table and stared at Rex as he made some tea. Ah. Where are my manners, do you want some? He offered while holding up the kettle. No thank you. We are here about 2 situations that you are in some way related to. First, you were at Vermilion Bank a month ago. During the period you were present, there was a robbery from several accounts ranging in the millions. Are you aware of this? She asked slowly, inspecting Rex's behavior and reactions the whole time. Rex chuckled slightly before spinning around on his heels. He was carrying his teacup and some cookies as he made his way to the table where he sat opposite them. He dipped the cookies in the tea before taking a bite. Only the sound of his munching could be heard in the silent room. It wasn't until Rex swallowed audibly that he responded. I had no knowledge of such things. How unlucky must I be to actually get myself involved with such an unfortunate event? Is there anything I can help with? He asked, casually glancing at the both of them as he sipped his tea. He even raised his pinking elegantly. There was a bulging vein on Jenny's face that threatened to pop due to Rex's behavior. That is why we are here, she said through slightly gritted teeth. According to multiple eyewitness accounts, you were spotted walking in, sitting down for 15 minutes before leaving. Not once did you get up to retrieve money, deposit money or do anything related to a transaction of money with the clerks available. I would like to ask you what you were doing during this time, she asked with an arched brow. Clearly suspicious of Rex. Once again, the silence resumed as Rex ate his breakfast at a leisurely pace. Ahem. I recently arrived in Kanto at the end of last year. I decided to participate in the league and got registered for it with the help of Professor Oak in Pallet Town. I stayed with him for several months before embarking on my journey. During this time, I decided to explore everything. Naturally, a bank was on the to-visit list. Can't blame a tourist for sightseeing, can you? He joked. That is not good enough, Mr. Pierce. Call me Rex. There's no need to be so formal. Rex interrupted. Rex, as I just said, that is not good enough to exclude you from the investigation, she said sternly. Then do what you must do. That is my alibi, do with it what you will. Now, please move on to the next subject, I have things to do and you're wasting my time. He responded impatiently. He could respond however he wanted considering their complete lack of evidence. There was nothing they could do. Gaia was already making it millions of times more difficult as they spoke. If they wanted to trace the money to him, they would need, by Gaius calculations, several years of non-stop tracking for them to even come upon an inkling of suspicious activity. So, there was nothing to be worried about. Officer Jenny was fuming as she glared at Rex angrily. Yet, no matter how she worked her brain or how much she opened her mouth intending to say something, she would always return to Rex's calm smile. Evidently unfazed by the entire situation. Eventually, Jenny was forced to put that matter aside. With a heavy sigh, her expression sank even more as she looked at Rex with extreme attention. Rex, we have been investigating the death of a woman in her early 20s. Her name is Jessie. I assume you have heard of this? She asked slowly. Rex nodded. Yes, I found out the day after I took her back to her place. To think the house would burn down in a fire. And for her to still be inside is a tragic event. Jenny squinted at his response. We have several eyewitness accounts that have painted a rather detailed picture for us. You were the last person with her before she died. You must have some information, right? She asked expectantly. Sadly, I don't. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but all I did was take a pretty girl for dinner, take her home and then leave. There really isn't much to it. He shrugged. What did you order for dinner? She asked. What does THA? Answer the question. She interrupted. A steak with a side of salad. Standard dinner. He answered with a confused expression. Jenny didn't mind him and nodded. Many people there that night? No, it was a quiet night. 2 couples to our left, 1 behind me and 3 in front of us. 10 staff not including the 7 cooks in the kitchen and the 2 receptionists. His answer surprised Jenny, catching her off guard for a moment. But it didn't take long for her to regain her composure and with a dry cough resumed her questioning. How did you meet Miss Jessie? Car dealership, she helped me make a deal on a set of bikes that I liked. I asked her out to dinner after that. Jenny wrote it down before verifying it with her partner who nodded silently. Rex, you wouldn't, by chance have said that you were going to accompany her for the night during the end stages of your dinner, right? She asked slowly and cautiously. She was careful to observe any differences in Rex's face. But she was destined to be disappointed. All she got was a small smile. That would be correct. I did propose that at dinner. But once I got there, I changed my mind. Jenny nodded slightly. At what time did you leave the establishment to take Miss Jessie home? She asked. 7:30 in the afternoon. It was already night time and I wasn't about to let her walk home alone. So, I took her back on my bike. It took 10 minutes to get there where I dropped her off before leaving. He responded. I see, it was rather late. But I have one eyewitness testifying that a bike, which matches the description of yours, was parked outside of her house for several hours. And only left a minute before the explosion was set off. What would you have to say to that? She asked. Rex was silent for a moment. They go on to say that they saw you have a heated discussion with Miss Jessie through the window which resulted in an altercation. Rex started to smile slightly. He slowly got up, causing the duo to flinch slightly as they reached for their guns. Ho! Relax there. I'm just opening the door for you. He said as he walked to the front door before opening it wide. Why would you do that? I still have more questions. Rex smirked slightly before walking towards her. He didn't stop until he was less than a meter away. He leaned into her ear, causing her to flinch again. Next time you try to bullshit your way into getting a confession or a reaction out of me, you should at least try to make it convincing. Now, on your way. My lawyer will be contacting you soon. I'm sure they will be most helpful in clearing up this misunderstanding we have," he said confidently before walking back to the door. Jenny and her partner looked at each other before sighing in defeat and leaving. They would have to go over what they had before taking further action on Rex. Currently, they had no evidence to keep him locked up. So even if they detained him, they would have to let him go after 24 hours. Considering their lack of conclusive evidence for the past month, detaining him would be a waste of everybody's time. But their suspicions of him rose slightly nonetheless. Bang! As soon as the door closed, a grimace appeared on Rex's face. "Deal with this, please. Relax, I have it all covered. Giovanni will have his personal attorney act as my stand-in. He will say what I want him to say. We will have Giovanni prepare a fall guy. He has the resources for stuff like that. Plus, not all of his personnel can be converted. Some are just scum. 2 birds, 1 stone. This will all go away in the next 48 hours. Rex breathed out a sigh of relief as he slumped down on the chair he was so calmly sitting on just a moment ago. "Where do you think they got such an accurate bluff from?" he asked out loud. "That Officer Jenny is a bright one, she must have some sort of card up her sleeve. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. According to police records, well, there are none about any evidence or detailed report about any eyewitness in the neighborhood. But this serves as a good lesson to us both. We will need to do better in covering our tracks when we want to do things like this. I think starting up a unit that deals with cleanup will be very helpful in years to come. Sometimes, the peaceful way fails. And when that method falls through, violence is the next best option. I suggest we add it into the company plan under secret organization. How about it?" Rex turned to the door as he thought about all the times he had killed someone. Hell, there was even a massive pile of rotting corpses buried just outside of Lavender Town. He needed manpower in order to deal with this trivial stuff. "Go ahead and make it a thing. What do you want the name to be?" Rex smirked again at the question. "Wicked. Wicked. Wicked is good. Sometimes it's bad deeds that produce good results," Rex explained with a twisted smile. Gaia began to laugh slightly. "I like it very well. I'll have it prepared. Rex leaned back on his chair, resting his head on the backrest as he stared at the ceiling with several thoughts in mind. "What should we do first?" he asked. "We have a lot of time now, a month and a half to be exact, before the league begins. In this time, we have to catch those 2 birds, convince Mewtwo to join our team, fix his problem, boost his power and construct our company so that it is ready for launch the second you become champion. So, all in all, we have a lot to do, but at the same time, not too much. If we are organized, you can be done with relative ease. The company is something I will deal with. So, the rest of the month can be spent training the twins, yourself and your Pokemon, or simply getting a long-deserved rest from the journey you just spent all year on. Gaia explained. Rex continued to stare at the spinning fan on the ceiling as he tried to organize his thoughts appropriately. "I guess we can start with getting the twins the legendary birds. Once they have caught them, I'll spend that time training them in techniques for battling and raising Pokemon. This will last for a month before the events of Mewtwo take place. That should last no more than a day from the time we get the invitation. Once that is all over, I'll spend the next half a month training Mewtwo one-on-one. The rest can train individually. There is nothing more left to teach them. It is up to them to advance themselves. He said out loud. I think that will work. Shall we get to it? Asked Gaia. Rex chuckled and finally raised his head from the chair before standing up and stretching. He looked around his room for a brief moment before making his way to the window where he looked out towards the mountainside out in the distance. Towards the east of Mount Silver on Route 23, he would be battling for the position of champion, ascending to the ranks of the most supreme trainers in the world. Time to go, he murmured softly before leaving the apartment. He had already gotten Gaia to inform Elisa of his plan. They were currently waiting in the lobby for him. His first target would be Moulters. Interestingly enough, Moulters was located on Victory Road, said to overlook every yearly league held in Kanto. And the eternal flame that is used in the opening ceremony is actually lit up by Moulters himself. Gaia had already pulled up satellite imagery that was compiled from the past 2 years. It targeted the flight patterns of Moulters and overlapped them with heat sensory imagery to precisely track the location of the bird. The reason he was fine with handing out the birds was that they had backups reading to replace the previous ones on the rare occasion that they are captured. As people will come to know very soon when Gala makes contact with Kanto and the other regions, there are records of migratory patterns from the 3 birds. So, like Arcanine, they cannot be deemed as legendaries since they have a large quantity of them roaming around the world. The reason this is not known is that they rarely move from Gala that has a much more suitable environment for their growth compared to Kanto. So, there was actually no harm in capturing these birds because there was bound to be a migratory group coming by in the coming years. Why one of each species decides to be left behind is something even Rex didn't know. But he didn't really care. As he walked out of the elevator, he noticed the 3 ladies sitting by the couch area. Making his way over, they traded pleasantries and chatted for a brief moment before walking out of the hotel itself a couple of minutes later. Monica tugged on Rex's shirt slightly, causing the latter to turn around with a soft questioning look. Where are we going? She asked with wide eyes, curiosity clear in her gaze. Rex smiled slightly before ruffling her hair and pinching her cheeks. I need to go buy a car before we go anywhere. I can't fit you all on my bike now, can I? He asked with a chuckle. Monica rubbed her red cheeks that were now sore from the pinching while glaring angrily at Rex. A car? Elisa asked in surprise. If you need transportation to go somewhere, I can get Zapdos to take us, she offered. Rex nodded slightly but then shook his head. We will naturally be taking Zapdos so that we get there quicker. But for now, we have to exit the city and get away from prying eyes. I doubt a trainer who has the legendary Zapdos being filmed on the news will do us any good. Right? He asked. Elisa understood his meaning and nodded in appreciation. If she was exposed on the news for catching Zapdos, people would start asking questions. Maybe even develop malicious intent for taking their legendary Pokémon away. So, it was best to keep it under wraps for a while. It wasn't forever though, since Zapdos was her ace, she would be using it plenty in years to come on her way to becoming the champion of Unova. But for now, there was no reason to bring more trouble to herself with no benefit involved. Rex exited the city 20 minutes later in the equivalent of a Mercedes-Benz CLS class. A 4-door car with a fast top speed. Rex was initially surprised to see the high level of similarity between the cars in this world and those of his past life. He was someone who liked to roll up in style, so he went for the Mercedes-looking one. Elisa was riding shotgun with the twins gasping as they played with all the buttons in the back seat. They kept repeating how good the smell of the car was. Something anyone would be happy to smell. But then a beautiful tune rang out in the ears of Rex and the twins, capturing them instantly. They turned to the source of the music only to find Elisa with her hair flowing as she stared out the open window. Her beautiful face basked in the natural light, further enhancing her beauty as she continued to sing softly amidst the sound of the raging wind. "Tha, that song. You were the one singing outside my hotel room," Rex shouted in realization, surprising Elisa, who turned to him. "What do you mean?" she asked with a puzzled gaze. Rex calmed himself down before speaking once more. "You were the one who was singing that song early in the morning on Cinnabar Island," he explained. "Oh, yeah, maybe that was me. I love to sing, so it mostly likely was me. Sorry if it sounded bad," she said in embarrassment. Rex shook his head. "It's the opposite, you have an amazing voice. Soothing and pleasant to the ear," he complimented, earning a blush from Elisa. Monica and Jessica both nodded their heads vigorously. "That's right, Sis is an amazing singer. Not only is she beautiful, but she is also incredibly kind. She used to sing to us when we were little. She is the reason we were able to make it through our father's abuse." Monica explained, her tone becoming more solemn the further along she went. A tense atmosphere clung onto the air in the car, making it completely quiet. Rex looked through the rear-view mirror to see the faces of the twins. His actions didn't go unnoticed by the duo, which made them focus on him. "Why don't you guys pick a song to play? Better yet, you guys can be the DJs for the remainder of the ride," he offered with a smile. Instantly, the eyes of the twins brightened up like stars in the night sky as they rushed to get a hold of the phone he was holding up in his hand. Soon, loud party music was being played through the speakers. This surprised not only Rex but Elisa, who was staring at the twins as their heads rocked forwards and backwards in rhythm with the beat. Rex couldn't help but chuckle happily at their actions. "They are quite the energetic duo, aren't they?" he asked Elisa. The latter nodded silently before staring at Rex. "Thank you for this, Rex. It is only because of you that they are free of their suffering. That I'm free of my shackles. I can't thank you enough," she said seriously. There was a brief silence before a warm hand covered Elisa's. "You don't have to be thankful. I believe you would have managed the same thing at some point or another. You are an amazing trainer. And we have already gone over this, your issues are my issues. So it's only natural that I help," he said softly as he moved to caress her face. The twins had long stopped dancing as they silently listened into the conversation. They gazed at each other as a solemn expression surfaced on their faces. But it slowly morphed into one of gratitude as they focused on Rex's back. They silently thanked him for all he had done. Elisa silently sat there holding his hand before giving it a kiss. "If that's the case, then your issues are my issues, right? I saw a couple of police officers talking about you as they walked into the elevator. It wasn't long before they walked out with angry expression on their faces. They were mumbling something about you being suspicious." "What's going on?" she asked in a whisper. Rex turned to her before contemplating whether to inform her or not. He looked through the rear-view mirror and noticed that although the twins were dancing slightly, and the music was loud, that they were actually paying full attention to their conversation. This was neither the place nor the time to be talking about sensitive issues. Let alone tell her that he had killed before. So, with that in mind, he reverted to his clam persona as he caressed her hand slightly with his thumb. There was a robbery at a bank I had just so happened to be in at the time. They were just asking some questions as a routine. They did the same with everyone else that was there at the time. Apart from that, I was being questioned over the death of a woman I had you know what, never mind. I'll tell you later. We're here, he said. Elisa was about to continue asking when her attention was directed to the empty field in the middle of nowhere. Perfect for using Zapdos. Monica didn't really notice anything and hopped out of the car once it grinded to a halt. But Jessica stared at Rex with a squint as a flicker of light flashed through her eyes. Rex naturally caught on to this through his enhanced sense. He knew he would have to clear this up or else the little girl would make some weird and most likely crazy speculations that were way off. But he was once again surprised at how aware the little girl was about this sort of thing. Rex left the car there. They walked towards a clear space before hopping on Zapdos, who was just appeared. In a matter of seconds, they were already above the clouds. Rex had used his aura to create a barrier to stop the wind from blasting them off the back of the Pokémon. Zapdos, let's go meet your friend Moltres, Elisa said while patting the bird's back. Zapdos was visibly surprised for a moment before nodding slightly and changing course towards the mountains in the distance. Rex was already staring in the direction but for a different reason. In the distance, even from this altitude, a massive array of buildings could be seen. And in the middle of it all, an enormous stadium bigger than anything he had ever seen in his life. For the first time since arriving to this world, he was surprised about what he was seeing. This was completely different from the anime. There was simply no way the two could even begin to be connected. The stadium itself was massive. Just by looking at it, one could tell it was capable of holding hundreds of thousands of people. And they would all look down towards a battlefield in the middle covered in neatly trimmed grass. There was a glass dome covering the top and above it was a blimp silently floating there. On its sides, massive screens could be seen that were currently turned off. This was the Indigo Plateau where he would be fighting for the champion seat. That was where his future lay. But what surprised him was the physical difference between how the league was depicted in the show compared to what he was currently looking at. Throughout the anime, the Pokémon world has never been futuristic, or even modern to a high degree. The Colossus, Unova and Galar regions might be the most modern with high tech. But what he was seeing didn't correlate with that at all. It was grand, luxurious and incredibly high-tech. Gaia was currently informing him of the specific tech that was found inside. A force field is built into the battlefield to stop attacks from hitting the audience. It is incredibly powerful. The battlefield itself also changes. So even though it is currently a grassy terrain, it can change. I assume, based on previous years' footage and memory of the Colossus region, that the battlefield is chosen at random. It can be advantageous or not depending on the Pokémon you use. These were the most surprising things. There was never a force field that was used to prevent harm to the audience in the anime. Granted, most Pokémon battling wouldn't be able to produce such disastrous effects to warrant such implementation. But to have it nonetheless was something rather technological. Gaia was about to delve into how it was made when Rex stopped her. He was not so interested that he would sit through what he guessed would be an hour-long lecture on force fields and the science behind them. All that he was interested in was the fact that it existed. He then turned his gaze towards a distant mountain opposite the league. There, deep within, Moltres could be found. This was going to be Monica's Pokémon. During the ride, Rex had asked the two girls what their Pokémon were. Not surprisingly, Monica had an incredibly strong Emboar as her starter. A firefighting type with very high health and physical attack. And although it was slow, it made up for it with the sheer firepower it held in its fists. Rex was rather curious about how strong Emboar would be if he trained it. What would it become? He often wondered what would become of the Pokémon he trained if he went to other regions. He never really gave traveling much thought. He had always been tunnel-visioned on beating the Kanto League. Maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea to travel after all. There were some insane Pokémon that were out there waiting for him to train. Dozens of legacies to attempt to find. And many leagues to challenge. He had only now realized that his goals had been rather small in the grand scheme of things. But this would have to wait until he sat comfortably upon his golden throne as champion. The group made their way towards the said mountain at blinding speeds. It only took a minute to get there and they finally descended in front of a cave with a diameter of 20 meters. It was huge. And a blast of hot air jetted out of the opening continuously like a jet engine heating up. The twins were so excited they walked in instantly only to be stopped immediately by Rex, who had a frown on his face. Don't run off like that. If it's this hot out here, can you imagine what it would be like inside? Stay close or you'll be fried dead. He warned sternly. The twins recoiled their necks like turtles as they were chided. They glanced at Elisa for help only to find her nodding to Rex's words with a serious expression on her face. Sis, maybe we'll be the ones suffering from their coupling, Monica said, turning to her sister. MHM, it seems it is best we go along with what they have arranged, Jessica said sensibly as she squinted her eyes in the direction of the couple. Don't dally, we are not here for a picnic. Monica, you have a week. If you can't take down this fire chicken by then, you will not get your Pokémon, is that clear? Rex announced. Monica flinched at his words, her nervousness began to grow as she stared into the deep dark cave. She was starting to lose confidence when a hand grabbed onto her own tightly. She looked down to find Jessica holding her hand with a confident smile on her face. Relax. You might be a hothead, but I have your back. If you thought about his words, he never said we couldn't help each other. And although I can't outright battle with you since it's an unspoken rule, I can help from the sidelines. You are not alone in this. She said calmly and slowly while raising a finger. Monica's eyes widened slightly before nodding repeatedly like a chicken in joy as she hugged her sister. Jessica looked over his sister's shoulder and towards Rex, who was grinning slightly before giving a very small nod which only she caught. Jessica couldn't help but be proud of herself for figuring out his hidden meaning so early on. Subconsciously, she was seeking his approval. She wanted to be just as strong as he was. The power he demonstrated that day, how he flawlessly defeated such a powerful Pokémon, had been forever ingrained in her memory. She would work hard and strive to become as strong as he was. The group made their way in slowly. The temperature started to rise with every step they took towards the depths of the cave. Even with the aura shielding up, the heat seemed to permeate it. Sweat dropped from Elisa's face as she walked behind Rex, who was still perfectly fine. Rex himself was rather surprised by this discovery. He asked Gaia to analyze his body for abnormalities so that he could find out what prompted this. The answer was something he himself was thinking of. Due to accepting the human inheritance, your resistance to the elements has increased dramatically. Therefore, what would be lethal to normal humans is but a mere breeze to you. That does not mean that you are invincible. You can still become dehydrated from high amounts of heat, suffer heatstroke and suffer from frostbite. It's just that the temperatures would have to be extreme. Elisa and the twins will probably not be able to reach Moltres at this point. I suggest you get Arcanine to help out. Gaia suggested. I was thinking along those same lines. He acknowledged before pulling out one of his pokeballs. This caught the attention of the three ladies as they focused on the beautiful design. The lapis lazuli mixed in with the black metal and the fiery design have a mesmerizing appeal. This was the second pokeball the twins had seen, and both were pokeballs that weren't on the market. They were never before seen editions. Which meant that the Pokémon inside must be special. The last one summoned a monster akin to nothing they had ever seen before. A demon descending on the mortal world. They wondered what would come out of this one. Elisa was also rather curious. She had never seen this one before and, like the twins, was eager to see what it was. Rex naturally saw their reactions, which brought a slight proud smile to his face. This was the reaction pure power caused. A gaze full of awe and eagerness. He clutched the ball tightly before sending it out onto the incredibly hot rock floor. Pop. Boom. Roo-oo-oo-ah-ah-ah. A massive, reverberating roar echoed through the cave, shaking the very mountain itself as small pieces of rock dislodged themselves and fell. The air vibrated and seemed to shatter as a blue beast appeared before everyone. Its mane blew in the windy cave, majestic and beautiful. A wave of gentle hot air blew past the faces of everyone present like an afternoon summer day. The perfect temperature for a nap under a tree. All the pressure, nervousness or bad feelings they had, dissipated like a dream. Like mist being blown away by the sea breeze. The three girls were stunned and speechless as they gazed at the deity before them. Arcanine stood there proudly with its head hung high, his mane billowing like raging flames. A sense of power and oppression emanated from his limbs as they tenses from time to time. The ground beneath his feet cracked from his mere weight. Rex didn't seem to mind his appearance and went in for a tight hug. "I'm so glad you're back to full health, buddy, I was worried there for a second," he said with deep emotion. A small trace of lingering fear flashed through his eyes as he recalled the image of Arcanine's half-dead body. "Relax, I'm not going to die off that easily. In any case, I think it was a blessing in disguise. I was able to increase my power level a lot after that encounter. It was like I needed to be shattered before reforging myself, like steel being smelted and forged. I have grown stronger since last time. But I digress, what is it you want from me?" Arcanine asked curiously as he took in his surroundings. Rex was speechless for a moment. "Since when did your speech level get so good?" he asked. Arcanine made an insulted expression before scoffing. "I prefer not to talk. So concise and easy to understand is more efficient. Doesn't mean I'm some barbarian living under a rock." Humph. Rex scratched the back of his head awkwardly. "Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Sorry for that then. Ahem. Getting back on task, we are going to chase after Moltres and catch it. Can you suppress the fire and heat around this area for the ladies behind me?" Arcanine frowned slightly before raising his head. He closed his eyes for a moment before opening them after a moment. He let out a thunderous roar that exploded in everyone's ears. A visible wave of air shot in every direction, and immediately, the heat died down like the air conditioner had been turned on to full blast. "TCH, that chicken has some nerve to be haughty in front of me to think he was trying to increase the heat to repel you even though he knew I was here. But what I don't get is why you need him. Don't you have me?" Arcanine asked as he turned back to Rex, who was picking his ears with his pinky. "Ha, oh that, it's not for me mate, like you said, I already have you. The chicken is for that girl over there," he said while casually pointing to Monica with his thumb, who was behind him without even turning around. Arcanine raised an eyebrow in intrigue before turning his gaze towards the three girls who were standing there with stupid expressions on their faces. It couldn't be helped, they were staring at a 4-meter-tall blue and black Arcanine that looked like something out of a legend or myth. Not to mention it could talk. Arcanine slowly made his way over and slowly sniffed the girls. He then dropped his head so that it was level with Monica's. Both sets of eyes locked onto the other as they silently stared at each other. It was only after 1 whole minute that Arcanine rose again and nodded slightly. "No wonder you chose the Firebird for this one," he said vaguely before returning to his pokeball. But his voice still echoed out in the space. "I'll control the heat from inside. If there is any danger, I'll come out again, if not, don't disturb me, I'm tired." Rex couldn't help but chuckle at his statement. His Pokémon were becoming more and more like him. And he didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. Since, as an honest person, he could admit he had some bad qualities. But only time would tell if these qualities would be bad when adopted by his Pokémon. They continued to make their way through the cave at a steady pace. Now that the heat was no longer a concern, the ladies began to relax again and started chatting with each other. Elisa held on to Rex's hand while occasionally caressing it affectionately with her thumb. Rex smiled silently and enjoyed holding her hand. Monica and Jessica rolled their eyes and winked at each other before skipping forward to escape the almost visibly pink atmosphere clinging to the cave, causing them to feel uncomfortable. They soon reached a larger area that connected to a much smoother tunnel that was wider than the rest. From within, a strong red glow pulsated in a rhythmic pattern. Thankfully, Arcanine was controlling the temperature, since otherwise, it would have been a bit troublesome for the three girls to sustain. Rex turned to the twins, who were curiously sizing up the entrance with their big watery eyes. "Monica, you will have a week starting today to capture Moltres. Fail and you will not get another chance. Is that understood?" asked Rex in a deep baritone voice, causing even their chests to rumble slightly like a drum being banged repeatedly by a hammer. Like Jumanji playing in their chests. Monica jumped slightly before nodding meekly, a spark of resolve only becoming clear in her gaze as she made her way through the tunnel and eventually focusing upon the bird atop the cliff looking down at them with a solemn expression. Pop! Arcanine silently appeared again before laying next to Rex, who had already made his way off to the side with Elisa, leaving Monica and Jessica standing there silently. "Listen, Fire Chicken, for the next week, this little girl will try to capture you. Fight as hard as you can, succeed and you will be rewarded, fail and, well, you know what happens. Let the odds be forever in your favor." Arcanine's teasing voice could only be heard by Moltres, and as it landed in its ears, it caused the bird's eyes to twitch vigorously. "As if I have a choice, you practically holding me captive. Hell, I can barely even use my flames with you here, yet you expect me to battle. Am I a joke to you?" Moltres thought to itself. It felt like crying from the injustice. It was quietly sleeping in its cave away from everyone. Why then was it disturbed? It couldn't even fight, it couldn't even use its flames. It was like its brother had betrayed it, the flames it could always control left its side. Naturally, Arcanine after recovering had improved to such an extent that he couldn't even be comparable to his previous self. As it turns out, Arcanine gets stronger from every loss, it's like a hidden condition. Apparently, the previous holders of this legacy were notorious for running all over the world chasing after defeat. That's right, defeat, they yearned for it, because with every loss they got qualitatively stronger proportionate to the gap between their opponent. A glorified masochist, if you will. And seeing how Umbra was on another scale, the boost Arcanine got was insane. So, he could now control all the fire in the surrounding among other things, meaning, all fire-type attacks were not only ineffective but also served as free attacks he could redirect towards his opponents, suppressing them in an infernal cage of eternal suffering. Moltres had no way of ever escaping, he was forced to dance upon Arcanine's palm like a puppet on strings. As a being who lived off fire, the life and death of Moltres were no longer in his hands, but in Arcanine's, the dog who can turn into a rainbow dragon of catastrophe. Monica looked at her future companion and a fire burned inside of her like a raging inferno only seen in the depths of hell itself. Her eyes seemed to glow with battle intent as she clutched the ball in her hand. All fear escaped from her mind. Jessica smiled at this. After all, this was Monica's so-called special ability, she wouldn't care about anything and give it her all. Rex had never seen her Pokémon before, so he was curious about what Monica had in store for him. Elisa looked to her left only to see a figure resting his chin on his hand, sitting comfortably atop a boulder, occasionally stroking Arcanine's fur. She just stared blankly at him, no thoughts running through her mind apart from the trust she had in him. She made her way over and gracefully sat right next to him before wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her head on his shoulder while focusing on the twins in front of them. Monica finally threw out her Pokeball. Bang! Boom! Imbor came out with a stomping tantrum, his feet created massive craters, cracks running up the side of the walls before causing parts of the ceiling to crack and fall. Rex frowned slightly and slowly extended his hand out and the boulders stopped in midair. This caught Imbor's attention, but when his eyes met Rex's, a deep fear suddenly settled in his very soul. A pair of massive eyes appeared in the dark expanse of his psyche and a single word echoed in his mind. Behave. That single word sent shivers down his spine. His tantrum immediately stopped, causing Monica and Jessica to open their eyes wide in shock. What happened, Mon? Your Pokémon has never been this docile. Jessica exclaimed with an incredulous expression on her face. Yet her attention didn't remain on the massive beast that was as quiet as a lamb but drifted towards the distant image of a man atop a boulder, winking at her as his slightly sharp white canine teeth peeked out from the slight parting of his lips. Truly a man of mystery. She thought to herself. Imbor Flariblitz, Monica commanded as she slashed her hand downwards with a resolute expression on her face. Imbor looked indignant but didn't hesitate and crossed his arms in front of his body as flames shot into the sky. A pillar of fire covered his entire body before he shot forwards like a cannonball toward the still calm Moltres, observing with a condescending expression. He gave one last glance at the devil sitting in the corner before clicking its tongue and swiping its wing slightly. A massive slash of wind instantly shot out towards the incoming pig at rocket speeds. Boom! The two attacks collided with each other, causing a cloud of smoke to cover the space momentarily before Imbor came crashing down to the ground, dispersing it completely. Whew, this is going to be a long week. Rex chuckled to himself as he reclined himself on the boulder as he observed the unconscious Imbor lying there like fried pork fresh out of the barbecue. Monica, Jessica and even Elisa were stunned speechless. How can he be so powerful? Monica shouted as she rushed towards Imbor with a worried expression on her face. Jessica cupped her chin with her hand and tapped her foot on the ground in a rhythmic motion. A pondering expression on her face. Imbor is part fighting type, so flying type moves are super effective, and Moltres is part flying, so it's stab. The experience difference is also clear to see. Moltres has been around far longer than Imbor here. So, it's naturally grown far stronger than your Pokemon Monica. You cannot win using brute strength. This is a clear outcome of such a strategy. This will be a very long week for us, she said with a solemn expression on her face. Monica looked at the Pokeball in her hand for a moment and her complexion took a turn for the better. At least we have these new Pokeballs Big Brother Rex gave us. Otherwise, I would have no chance of ever completing this challenge, she said, half mumbling. Jessica nodded and also looked at her own Pokeball. Truly a smart move. He has thought of every possibility from controlling the environment, to even suppressing Moltres without Monica knowing, something she was clear on based on the visible discomfort Moltres was exhibiting. Is this the power of a league trainer? It can't be, right? This is beyond simply a trainer worthy of challenging the league. This is older level. His power is without question as well. Maybe he truly can become the champion on Kanto, she said softly to herself. It was a random thought she had. It wasn't based on what she was currently experiencing, but it was a culmination of everything she had witnessed Rex do. So far, both Pokemon she was seen are terrifying to the point of suffocating by merely standing in their presence. Their forms were vastly different from the images she had seen when studying at the academy. This meant that Rex had chanced upon a new evolutionary route for these two Pokemon. This discovery alone is enough to make the world go insane. And she didn't limit her imagination to simply these two. There was a high probability that he had more unique evolutions hidden away. For instance, the Pokemon he had given her big sister. It couldn't have been a simple and ordinary Pokemon no matter the species. Even though it was incredibly strong, no Pokemon could take on hundreds of trainers unless it was legendary. And even then, if it was, it must be augmented like Zapdos. She was very intrigued as to what it was. It must be within the top of his Pokemon since he seemed to value her sister so much. His intelligence and battle capability are superb, clearly a cut or more above the rest. And that was based on the limited time she had been with him. It was very reasonable and within the margins of the acceptable to say that he might be even better than what he showed so far. After all, he hadn't been pushed to a point where strategy was needed to guarantee victory yet. All these thoughts flashed through her mind at a fast pace. By the time she snapped out of her thoughts, Imbor was back out onto the battlefield ready for another match. This time, his eyes were glued to Moltres, and with a huff, massive jets of steam exploded out of his nose. The fire around his neck burst into a raging inferno, clearly representing his anger and determination. Rex, who was reclining against the wall, raised his eyebrows. A playful glint flashed through his eyes. What a temperamental little fellow. Truly, a match made in heaven for the little lass, he said with a chuckle. With a flick, another chip fell into his mouth. Elisa reached in and got some for herself with a smile. This is normal for their species. They are violent and unwavering, they refuse to accept defeat. They are hard to control and even harder to raise due to their reckless behavior. But their power is evident. The more they fall into a disadvantage, the harder they fight and the stronger they become. Rex was surprised. Rare of you to be so interested. But I have to disagree, I'm far more interested in Samurott. Now that is a monstrous fellow. But I have a sneaking suspicion that its evolution is not the only pathway available. In actuality, I'm rather disappointed with the final result. Its first and second evolutions have massive potential, but the last one, TSK. Start a side project for it. Research ways to change its evolution. I might catch one for shits and giggles, he said in his mind. I agree with your reasoning, I'll get on it immediately. Rex smiled and continued to eat his snack. Time passed rapidly in the following 7 days, and Monica with her Imbor would go through a metamorphosis that would surprise even Rex. Throughout the next week, the group would remain in the cave witnessing as Monica trained and challenged Moltres over and over again like a broken record. Rex would spend time with Elissa, chatting, laughing and teasing the twins from time to time. At the top of the mountain, clouds converged like cotton candy swirling in its machine. The soft light from the morning sun embraced the silhouette sitting on the tallest ledge overlooking everything within several hundred kilometers. A handsome smile hung on his face, and a glint of unconcealed expectation flashes across his eyes as he glanced at the distant stadium standing erect and imposing. He pulled out his phone and lightly chucked it into the air where it floated slightly before enlarging into a large screen. This year's league information, he said gently. Beep. With a flash of light, the screen came to life and a website similar to YouTube came into view. On the top left, a big blue and red poker tube could be seen. Not very original, he stated with a chuckle before focusing on the changing screen that filtered through millions of different categories and videos before arriving upon the latest videos pertaining to information from this year's league. Welcome everyone to this year's league overview. In today's video, we will be going over all the recent content and information pertaining to the league, including some of the participants who have been in the spotlight through their social media posts revealing their exploits. A female voice said in a soothing tone that made one want to sit comfortably and listen in. Rex was naturally no exception. So, starting off, we will be going over any new information concerning the league itself. Through the sharing of technology from various regions, mainly Colossus and Unova, the stadium has gone through a massive remodeling for this year's tournament. This includes several specialized battlefields, better security, and a never-before-seen size increase with the ability to hold hundreds of thousands of people in the main stadium where the top 16 matches will be held. The rules have not changed and will therefore not be covered in this video. If you are interested in said information, please refer to the link that is now on the screen. Moving on, we have details on some promising individuals that will be participating in this year's league. Usually, it would be rather hard to find any people who have definitive chances of reaching the top 8, so we usually abstain from creating these spotlights. But we simply cannot ignore these challenges that bring forth a whole new level of competition this year. We have Carlo, a former Colossus League runner-up who even had the opportunity to spar with Colossus' current champion Diantha. His fans have been paying close attention to his movements after his loss last year. And it seems that he wants to try his luck in the Kanto League. His ace Pokémon is the incredibly strong shiny Noivern that decimated all the competition last year. We can only imagine how strong it would be after a whole year of training. The woman said with a slight trace of excitement. Rex arched a brow in surprise. This was different from the anime. It seemed that it wasn't going to be as simple as just Kanto and Johto trainers. But that was all it was. Surprise, even Lance wouldn't stand a chance before the bugged existence that is his Machamp and the rest. But at least he wouldn't be too bored when he witnesses some of the other fights. Next, we have Simon from the Alola region who is known for challenging several leagues already. He was the winner in Sinnoh but got defeated against the first Elite Four. He reached the top 2 in Huen and the top 8 in Unova. His ace is an Alolan Ninetales with incredible potential. Next is Fiona with her ace Alakazam from Kanto. She's a massive pop idol and a talented trainer facing her first league. Then there is Alex from Johto with his Typhlosion. He won the Johto League 2 years ago but stayed quiet since then due to his disastrous loss against the 4th Elite Four. The lady continued to name people who had some promise, but Rex skipped past most of it since he didn't really care. He wasn't surprised that he wasn't in there since no one knew of his existence. And even though he had some run-ins with the police, his name never once crossed the media. But the end of the video caught his attention. Now, we have a surprise I think all of you will be most interested to hear. We have comments from the gym leaders about one of the challenges this year. And their words, I have to say, startled even me. So, they said, and I quote, "This year will bring about a massive change. We shall not name this person, but they have the potential, nay, they will most likely pose a real challenge for the Elite Four. We cannot wait to see what this person shows us in the future. Other challengers must train harder if they are to even stand a chance." I honestly could not believe it either when I heard it too, folks. But for all the gym leaders, including Giovanni, the 8th gym leader, to come to this unanimous statement, it seems that there is a dark horse in our midst. This has piqued my interest. I simply cannot wait to see who this person is. Sadly though, that is the end of this video. Leave a comment telling me what you think, and until next time, goodbye. Rex couldn't help but smile slightly in surprise. And here he thought he wouldn't be mentioned. Sure, they didn't really mention him outright, but they all meant him. Out of curiosity, Rex scrolled down to the comments and began to read through them with interest. Holy shit! Carlo is taking part in the Kanto League. Coloss support you man, much love, good luck. Guy above, shut up, Simon is the only one qualified to take on Lance the Dragon Master. That nobody Carlo whatever can suck my D*******. I dare you to say that again F*******. Both of you uncultured swine should go hump in the corner. Obviously, it is Fiona who is going to succeed. Only a respectable and admired woman like her is able to take the win. It's about time a woman became a champion in Kanto anyway. What's gender got to do with it? What's gender got to do with it? Both of the previous commentators yelled angrily. Keep your feminist **t to yourself. Don't mix gender into this. It has no place on the battlefield. If she is qualified she will take it. But since she's just some useless idol who hasn't ever participated in a league before, she has no chance. And it's Alex for me. He has a strong chance of getting into the finals at least. Said another. Dozens of similar disputes blurred the screen, never once stopping. But suddenly one comment shone through the same repetitive bunch. Aren't we forgetting something? The gym leaders, including Giovanni mind you, have agreed that everyone you guys have just mentioned is still fighting to compete with this mysterious black horse. Wait, never mind, if we go by their words, they don't have the ability to compete. Why is no one asking more questions about this? The message didn't catch traction immediately due to the sheer amount of comments, but due to the moderates of the video wanting to advertise this, they pushed the comment to the top of the list, instantly catching the eyes of thousands. There was a visible pause as comments stopped with the repetitive spamming as if contemplating her words. That is true, but maybe they are simply overhyping this. Sure, they might be strong, but why keep it under wraps when they have the chance to be famous with the backing of all the gym leaders? Can someone answer that? The commentator who initially asked the question responded quickly. It is precisely because we don't know who it is, that it brings an air of mystery to it that, subsequently draws people in. This boosts the ratings of the live stream top 16 that this supposedly black horse will reach at the bare minimum. Secondly, maybe this person doesn't want so much attention pre-league. They must still be training incredibly hard, and interruptions might be a hindrance. Rex paused at this person's words before looking up and around him. Boundless blue skies, a small peak he was sitting on, and infinite land as far as his eyes could see in every direction. The soothing hum of insects bathing in the light of the sun, the gentle embrace of the wind caressing his face. Training, you say? He chuckled before returning his gaze to the screen where dozens of messages had already been sent. What surprised him the most was how civilized it was compared to before. It was like they were seriously deliberating this. He closed the phone soon after. Gaia, why was my name obscured from the public? He asked while laying down and closing his eyes. Giovanni thought it would be better this way. It would also serve to boost our sales. Rex creases an eyebrow with doubt. How will that happen? Your popularity will rise the more you battle. You have already guaranteed your place as champion, but by allowing the public to guess that it's you, they will feel a sense of achievement. I discovered him myself before anyone else. Type of mindset. This will build a friendly relationship between you and your fans, as well as a sort of attachment after investing their time into finding who you are. When the company is open to the public, there will be a much bigger reaction than before. This is a simplified version of things. Giovanni and I are still in the process of constructing the plan for the marketing of the company. It will be something they are influenced by without knowing. Rex contemplated Gaia's words and found them to be sound ones. He didn't really care, since he didn't mind having his name known to the world. It was a matter of time before it happened anyway. As he thought of this, he drifted off into a light sleep. There was still a couple of hours before the challenge was over. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. 4 people were staring at the screen in different locations with different emotions coursing through them. Carlo was intrigued. He loved competition, but he loathed people who were cowardly. So, he didn't appreciate this so-called black horse being so discreet. As for the words of the gym leaders, he didn't really care. They weren't much to talk about besides Blaine and Giovanni. He was still using his Colossus team, and yet these 2 gym leaders still posed a threat to him. Since he respected the strong and hated the weak, he took their words seriously and trained his team harder and harder. He could only hope that their words weren't empty when the time came. Contrastingly, Simon was a bit pissed off. He didn't know if he was being underestimated or if they were pumping up the tires of this loser, but he wasn't having any of it. He was tired of losing over and over. He had brought a trump card with him from Alala which would guarantee a place in the finals. He would crush this black horse of theirs and finally achieve his dream. Fiona was surprised and very curious. She was an idol, so she knew that this was a marketing strategy done by the league. But whether this trainer was cowardly, discreet, shy, or simply didn't care and went along with it with a promise of the profits, she would soon find out. She sipped on her tea in her hotel room and continued to watch the commentators battle for who the best trainer was. She was on the newer side when it came to professional battling. She knew her chances of winning the league against the other 4 were on the lower side, but she still wanted to give it a shot. Alex watched the stream silently. He had won the Giotto League but got demolished by the 4th Elite Four. His ego took a massive hit. He previously thought he would be crowned champion only to be 6-0 without an ounce of strength to retaliate. He vowed to train and train until he bled. And he was finally ready. It was only time was keeping him from his destiny as champion. The convergence of trainers was simply a month and a half away. Imbor flame charge go! Monica yelled as she cut down with her hand. From the tips of her fingers all the way to the top of her forehead, she was drenched in sweat, to the point where it began to drip off. Imbor! Bang! Cracks stretched like spider webs out from under the giant pig as his body began to burn with a green flame. That's right, he no longer burned with a red flame, but a green one. During the past week, whether it was consciously or not, Imbor's flames had been getting hotter and hotter. A pillar of green flames coated his exterior as his body blasted forward with tremendous momentum. Enough to rip the air apart as his two giant fists barreled toward the bird, which was now covered in blue flames and a serious expression on its face. In the beginning, it thought that it was simply a joke to fight this girl for a week straight. But it had no choice but to comply due to the horrible dog sitting in the corner yawning from time to time as it looked on with boredom. Monica had been warned not to use brute strength to fight molters since their strengths weren't on par, but Monica, being the hot-headed, stubborn girl that she is, threw away strategy as soon as it made her head hurt. Molters agreed with the much calmer little girl standing by the side and couldn't help but get increasingly more annoyed at how stupid this so-called Monica girl was. And that other terrifying human wanted it to accept this dumbass. What an insult! But with every loss, a spark of surprise flashed through the eyes of Molters. That was because, with every loss, they wouldn't get discouraged, they wouldn't even bat an eye before throwing themselves back in the moment they were healthy enough to continue. And it was 4 days ago that yellow flames began to flare up within the crimson-red ones. And slowly, throughout the day, it began to become more predominant until Imbor's flames were totally yellow. And it was only 2 days ago that green wisps of flames emerged from within the depths of the sunny yellow ones. Molters looked at the volcano-like existence that spewed endless jade-green flames without stopping as it rushed towards it. With every shade the flames changed, a qualitative transformation took place within the power of Imbor's moves. They were 3 times as powerful as before. Monica, Jessica and even Elisa were rather surprised and excited at this change. Monica even thought that this was enough to give her a real fighting chance. She turned her head to her sister and gave her a thumbs up with a silly smile on her face. "See sis, I told you my way is best. Look, with this I can definitely." Whoosh! A black shadow flew past her face, leaving behind a trail of hot air in its wake before a massive bang could be heard behind her. She turned her head mechanically towards the source of the sound, only to see Imbor firmly embedded into the rock wall like a sticker. It had fainted instantly. There was an eerie silence the next moment before everyone's attention focused back on the figure standing up on the cliff burning with majestic blue flames. The 3 girls gulped down a mouthful of saliva. Blue was after green, and it was a massive bottleneck for fire types. According to what Rex had told them, after blue came light blue and then white. The hottest flame in existence was the white flame in this world. But in order to breach the bottleneck of blue and reach light blue, a massive chasm awaited them. A chasm that could only be breached by tremendous strength. Right now, Arcanine was attempting to get better control over his element. He already had the qualifications to proceed to the next level, just that he wanted to have a good grasp on his element in its current state before moving up one more. After all, with every increment, the fire turns more volatile and harder to control. It was already the last day that Monica had to fight before her challenge was over. The pressure was getting to her. Rex had just walked in, drawing everyone's attention over. He didn't say anything since Monica was already under enough pressure and knew the situation she was in. But it was through this pressure that people and Pokémon were forged anew, stronger than ever before. He looked over at the pig embedded in the stone. Green wisps of flame still danced around his body, causing a small smile to rise from the indifferent visage he previously adorned. Very interesting, he thought to himself before staring at Arcanine, who had its eyes shut. Rex knew what was going on with him and didn't go over to interrupt him, since it was a long and tedious effort to consolidate his foundation. He made a gesture of looking at his watch before looking up at Monica, who was staring at him before raising his index finger. Instantly, Monica's face hardened like stone, and she recalled Imbor for some rest. This was going to be her final chance. Rex then looked up at Moltres and smiled. You can give it your all this time. Arcanine will release your restraints. Go all out, please, he said casually. But his words were like thunder on a sunny day. Monica, Jessica and even Elisa stared at him with mouths gaping and eyes wide to the extreme. They were in disbelief. Moltres had been suppressed all this time. Wasn't this just inhuman? Was this the gap between legendaries and normal Pokémon? Even when suppressed, Moltres easily dealt with them, only getting slightly more serious in this final fight they had. But even then, one move and he took out Imbor. Like swatting a fly. An hour passed in silence before a pop reverberated across the quiet cave, causing it to echo indefinitely. Imbor looked around and flinched heavily when he looked at Rex, as if seeing his childhood bully. He turned to Monica for comfort, only to see her sitting down on a rock with her head down, tears streaming down her face. She had finally given up. There was simply no way of winning against a beast like that. Not with her current ability. She thought that she could persevere through it, to ram it with her head as she did with all her problems until she won. But it seemed that this was not going to go her way this time. I'm sorry, Imbor, it seems, sniff asterisk, that I'm not good enough to receive this opportunity, she said as she choked on her tears. Imbor had already grasped the essence of the situation which had caused him to fight so hard in the first place. If it was simply to defeat a Pokémon, he wouldn't have fought so hard. But he was being replaced as his trainer's ace because he wasn't good enough. His pride couldn't take it. He could never allow this to transpire. He would show his trainer that he was strong enough to win. Maybe that way she would forget about this whole issue. Imbor lowered his head and walked towards Monica with heavy steps before crouching down and putting his palm on her small head as gently as he could. He proceeded to stroke it gently, causing Monica to inadvertently remember the times he had done that to her when she was upset. Monica raised her still teary face and looked at the silly smile on Imbor's face that perfectly mimicked the one she always had. Imbor raised his free hand and gave her a confident thumbs up before getting up again as jets of hot steam shot out of his nose. Like a forest of fire, he stood there staring at his opponent. Remembering her tear-filled face, eyes red and puffy, her sniffling echoing in the cave caused his heart to tear at the seams. He never wanted to cause her to cry. His eyes turned red in fury the next moment before he roared out with all his might, causing the very cave to shake vigorously, startling the girls. It was do or die, he had to win or he would die trying. Rex smiled imperceptibly. He looked over at Arcanine only to see the same mischievous smile on his face. Seems our goal has been accomplished, he mumbled. Elisa shuddered at the words only she heard, as her eyes widened in utter shock and disbelief. Monica and Imbor stood to one side, determined to win against the blue phoenix standing atop the cliff with a serious expression. It no longer had the relaxed look it once adorned. It understood the importance of this battle for this trainer, and that it would make or break them. It was very much interested to see what power they would demonstrate in their desperation for victory. As one of the three legendary birds of Kanto, it represented a specific set of traits. perseverance, determination, and the will to never give up. That was partly the reason why the league used Moulter's flame in their tournament. It represented the challenger's desire and yearning for victory even when up against insurmountable odds, in their case, the Elite Four and their peers. So, although it somewhat looked down on Monica for her strong-headedness and inflexibility in battle, it also admired that positive traits such a mindset brought, traits that were very much in line with what a good trainer should exhibit if they wish to be the best. As a show of seriousness, Moulters flapped its wings and flew down to the ground and stood high and mighty, all the while gazing at Imbor and his trainer with battling intent. Flames raged across its body, dancing with the yearning for combat. Imbor clearly knew this was a battle like no other. This was something that transcended himself. For the first time, he was doing this for his trainer's pride, so that he would never see that sad face ever again. He smashed his fists together, causing green sparks to fly as a torrent of hot air shot out of his nose. His muscles bulged and his eyes squinted. Monica clenched her small fist tightly, as she stared at her opponent intensely. This was her last chance, and even though she was originally dismayed at her chances, staring at the massive back of her most trusted partner, which had been with her through thick and thin, she felt a surge of confidence that even she didn't know existed. "Let's do this, buddy, win or lose, we are going to prove that we are not simply pushovers," she yelled, seemingly trying to convince herself as well. Imbor roared loudly in response as the green flames around his neck burst forth violently. "Use rollout go," she yelled. Bang! With a start, Imbor leapt into the air before doing a flip that continued until the image of a giant boulder replaced his figure. With great momentum empowered by his weight, Imbor barreled towards Moulters at surprising speeds. Rollout got strong and faster the longer it was used. Moulters, being an experienced fire-forward/flying type with a quad weakness to rock, perfectly understood this. It flapped its wings, causing a tornado to form before sending it towards Imbor. The tornado left a deep scar on the earth beneath it as it shot towards the massive incoming boulder. As the two collided, Monica expected Imbor, due to his weight and momentum, to easily shatter the tornado. But much to their shock, not only did it not shatter it, Imbor was easily lifted off the ground and began to spin with the tornado. Maybe if Imbor was allowed to roll a bit longer, the momentum would have been enough to shatter it, but you seem to have forgotten that there still exists a disparity in strength between the two. Elisa chimed in suddenly, awakening Monica from her disbelief. She had a grim expression on her face as she observed Imbor, who now looked like a rock, being dragged along in circles like a pebble. Jessica saw this coming, and so did Rex the moment she saw what Moulters did. The fiery temper didn't allow Monica to take this lying down, and the gears in her head began to take in the surroundings. Suddenly, a wild idea popped into her mind. "Imbor, use the wind to spin backwards." The order was a bit confusing, but Imbor, at this point, completely trusted his trainer and did as told. Rex couldn't help but smile slightly. Using the force of the wind to generate spin. Instead of trying to continue spinning against the wind, she's using the wind to create more spin, but in the opposite direction, he thought. It was a rather interesting method, but what was the point if she didn't get any traction? Moulters saw this happening but wasn't alarmed and simply raises its wing, causing Imbor to rise to the top of the tornado before swiping its wing down, causing the twister to bend before smashing into the ground. The collision sent a cloud of dust to rise, as the sound of rocks flying spread everywhere. But just as everyone thought that Imbor had failed, a spinning sound could be heard coming from within. Like a grinder against rock. "Something like that isn't going to stop us," Monica yelled before punching out with her fist. As if those words were a signal, Imbor burst through the cloud, spinning so fast that the air began to warp around him. Before Moltres could blink, a giant boulder occupied the entirety of its vision. Moltres felt a suffocating pressure rushing towards its face. Without much time to react, it twisted its body to avoid the attack but wasn't quite fast enough. Although it was able to avoid a full-blown impact, it still got hit on the side, causing it to stumble for a while. Monica clenched her fist with all her might. Rollout was the only move that could beat Moltres in a contest of power. Fire types didn't have binding moves apart from Fire Spin, and flying type moves only had Gust and Hurricane. Moltres had used Gust as the foundation before empowering it with Hurricane to create a massive tornado. She was banking on the compounding strength of Rollout to break through it. And much to her relief, Imbor was able to do it. The massive boulder was gathering even more momentum with every passing second. Alongside its increasing speed, Moltres knew this was going to get more difficult. Moves like Rollout were easy to take care of in the beginning but would soon become unstoppable if left unchecked. A simple flamethrower, even with his blue flames, wouldn't be enough to stop the pig. And unlike Arcanine, who could simply slap it once and be done due to his tremendous physical attack, Moltres was weak physically. A glass cannon of sorts. It had to think of a way to stop this move before it actually lost. As it racked its brains, a sudden voice echoed in his mind, causing Moltres to freeze for a second before peering at the man calmly sitting on the stone with a gentle smile, as if nothing concerned him, as if he was merely a mirage untouched by the world. Beside him rested Arcanine, who was having his mane softly stroked by Rex. You won't win at this point. Rollout cannot be stopped with conventional methods at this point. You have no crowd control moves, and your power is not enough to stop its momentum. So that means you have to think of another way. But looking at your clueless expression, it seems you don't quite know. I won't interfere much, just to get you on the right path. Use Will-O-Wisp, Sunny Day, combine Hurricane with Fire Spin. Then use Flamethrower. He said slowly and without hurry, seemingly uninterested in the match to begin with. Moltres was stunned for a moment before replaying the words this human had said. The sequence of moves was interesting. Will-O-Wisp decreased attack by 50%, Sunny Day increased fire attacks by 50%, meaning that Imbor now took full damage from fire-type moves instead of half due to resistance. Fire Spin is already a crowd control move. When empowered by Hurricane, the strongest AoE flying-type move, the fire will burn incredibly, massively boosting the overall power of the tornado. But fire tornadoes usually burn more fuel to stay alive. That's where Flamethrower comes in. The constant stream of blue flames will further increase the size and speed of the tornado, subsequently growing its destructive power. Moltres thought that it was worth giving it a shot. Although it didn't hold much hope since it was essentially the same move, but if Will-O-Wisp decreases its attack, it will probably slow down momentarily. The time frame for success was small, but it was worth giving it a shot. Rex didn't need to say more. Moltres was an experienced Pokémon, and it knew what it had to do and when. That was not the end of his instructions, since the tornado was actually only a catapult meant to transform Moltres into an unstoppable arrow when supplemented with two other moves used together. But he would let the bird figure that out. He had high hopes for this legendary. Their small conversation went unnoticed by everyone else in the cave. It only took a few seconds. To begin with, from the time Rex gave his instructions to Moltres figuring out why those moves specifically. But in that short time, Imbor had already appeared back in front of Moltres. The bird flapped its wings and turned into a streak of blue before reappearing in the middle of the air, looking down at the boulder it had barely dodged using agility. It didn't wait for anything else and immediately took the opportunity to use Will-O-Wisp. Usually, status moves were hard to land because they were easy to telegraph. Most trainers had to hide them before using them the moment their opponent showed an opening. After all, status moves were battle-changing moves. Paralysis, sleep, burn and poison can all change the tides of battle in someone's favor no matter how bad their current predicament is. But since Imbor couldn't stop even if he wanted to at this moment, his trajectory became very easy to read and therefore exploit. As if a ghost had appeared on the battlefield, 3 balls of purple flames appeared before Imbor in an instant before seeping into his body. The next moment, the boulder that was rolling at fast speed spontaneously combusted, catching on fire momentarily before returning to normal. At that moment, due to having to change directions causing Imbor to temporarily lose speed and now losing half his strength, his speed was at its lowest. This moment wouldn't come again. Moltres roared as a massive hurricane burst out with a flap of its wings. Yet right where Imbor was heading, a tornado took shape. Like a blue dragon breaching the surface of the water, a spring-like vortex formed that immediately grew to enormous proportions due to the boost from hurricane. But Moltres didn't stop there, a savage glint flashed through its eyes. He flapped his wings again and used tailwind, which, like flamethrower, served to continuously feed air to the tornado, helping it grow stronger with every passing second. Before Imbor could even think, it was swept off of his feet and chucked into the air where it rotated around endlessly. Due to speeds of more than 140 miles per hour, Imbor was dizzy and constantly pelted by rocks covered in fire resembling small meteors. Moltres had sacrificed using Sunny Day earlier for tailwind since it thought it would be better to produce noticeably better results faster. And it was right. Due to the tornado's hungry nature, it consumed the oxygen in the surroundings with insatiable greed. Moltres roared again as the flames around its body burst out momentarily, almost like a rising sun, before harsh sunlight began to emit from its body that further empowered the vortex. The dragon-like spiral seemed to become a ravenous beast as the sunlight touched its body, increasing its size again. Monica was astounded, shocked and speechless. She didn't understand how this was happening, she couldn't process what was going on, she didn't have time. It didn't work last time, it won't work this time. Imbor, spin backwards like last time. She yelled, trying to hide the unease in her heart. Jessica tried to stop her since she noticed that something was very wrong, but it was too late. Monica had already issued the command. Imbor roared and began to spin backwards with all of his might. Moltres gazed at the struggling Pokémon before its chest glowed blue. Then, as if a dam had been breached, a massive wave of fire shot towards the tornado like a second dragon coming to the rescue of its little brother. Monica didn't have time to panic, she was racking her brains trying to think of a way out of this. Use defense curl and then roll out, she yelled. Although it would reset the move, with the momentum he would gain from the tornado, she was confident Imbor would be able to break through easily. The main reason was that defense curl doubled the power of rollout. Her mind had been too clouded with worry and unease due to the stakes of the battle that she forgot such a move. Imbor did as he was told, and a small circular transparent ball wrapped around him before returning to his boulder-like state. But this time, there were massive spikes on the outside, clearly, it had gotten a qualitative jump in strength. Moltres was initially happy, thinking that it had finally succeeded, but looking at the persistence of this pair, it finally lost his cool. It raged and glowed with blue flames. It was using Flare Blitz. But it wasn't stopping there, it used Burn Up to complement the attack. This was a physical and special attack in one. It expended all the fire energy in its body for one final attack. It was in no mood to play around anymore. As if a second sun had been born inside the cave, its blinding blue light astounded everyone present. Monica paled as her eyes widened with fear. Before she could scream for Imbor, Moltres had already shot towards the pig like a rocket. Monica had tears welling up in her eyes as she recklessly ran towards the tornado that would easily torch her to death without a shred of hesitation. But all she had in her mind was panic and fear for the after effects. She didn't dare think about the aftermath of such a nuclear attack. Rex was rather surprised. He thought that Moltres would use Flare Blitz with agility, while complementing it further with the momentum from the tornado to destroy Imbor, but to use its own fire essence to finish this move, went beyond his previous assumptions. It would lose its fire typing for a while and enter an exhausted state as a consequence of using this move for the rest of the battle. Naturally, the damage it could deal by paying such a price was major. This was too dangerous. If Imbor received that attack, he would die without a shadow of a doubt. Not even his ashes would be left. He sighed slightly, maybe he had gone too far. He shook his head before softly speaking. Arcanine, tackle. Arcanine, tackle. Boom. The ground cracked instantly as if an invisible weight has been dropped on top of it. There was nothing there anymore. Before anyone could even blink, a black streak shot towards the colliding pair. Arcanine got to Imbor and gently swiped his paw on the surface of the boulder. It seemed incredibly gentle, like a gentle breeze caressing a flower. Yet the outcome was completely different. Imbor, like a rubber ball, seemed to have hit the hardest material in the world, and simply shot back the way he came and into the wall before burrowing into it for several meters without stopping. The sound of rumbling, fire crackling and an ear-piercing whistle as if a kettle was in the background suddenly assaulted his ears. Yet all he did was look at the incoming attack with a bored expression and shot head first towards it. He was immune to all fire-type attacks, no matter how strong they were. All it ended up doing was empowering his own moves. As the two collided, a massive shockwave exploded out in all directions. Rex had long put up an aura shield around the girls and coated the walls, ceiling and floor of the cave so as to not destroy the place. After all, this was still Moltres' home. A blinding light assaulted the eyes of the girls, causing them to cover their faces for fear of being blinded otherwise. Like a flashbang, the blast of light only lasted a moment before everything returned to normal. Monica twisted her neck upwards again to see the result before paling even further. The result completely shocked her, so much so that she froze in place. Arcanine was still in the air, seemingly fine, but Moltres soon fell like a broken kite and crashed onto the floor. It had fainted from the collision. Arcanine swiftly landed and went back to Rex's side as if everything that had just happened had nothing to do with him. The girls' gazes followed him as he sat down and yawned, showing his massive canine teeth several inches in length. Monica was the first to snap out of it and rushed towards Imbor. She feared that the impact may have caused severe damage to him. But as soon as she arrived, she was surprised to see that he was perfectly fine. He didn't seem to have sustained any damage from that attack just then. She turned her focus to Moltres and it too didn't sustain any damage from that final attack. Finally, fear began to set in her mind as she thought of Rex's Pokémon. This was not something normal, all of them must be catastrophe, region-leveling monsters. She shivered for a good while before Jessica grabbed her shoulder, finally snapping her out of her daze. Don't worry about that for now, recall Imbor so he can rest. she reminded. Monica quickly nodded and pulled out her Pokeball. But as the red light entered it, she sighed slightly. What a wake-up call, to think that such levels of strength were possible in this world. I guess I don't really deserve Moltres since I not only lost but also lack the heart to stay unflinching when the odds are against me, she mumbled, her voice getting lower and lower until it was a whisper. No one is entitled to anything, therefore, someone being deserving or not is irrelevant. It is about proving you have what it takes to gain a Pokemon's trust, that is all that matters in this instance. After all, they will be fighting in your name, listening to your commands and taking damage if you make the wrong judgment call. Working hard for what you want is all that matters, make sure to remember that. Rex's voice suddenly rang out, attracting the attention of everyone present. The purpose of this was to test your relationship with your Pokemon, for you to see just how big the world is, and to ground you for future ventures. I'm sure that if you asked Moltres if it wanted to be your partner, it might actually agree, isn't that right? He asked, looking towards the Pokemon who was now awake. Although it looked bruised and battered from that last attack, it was actually fine. When it heard Rex's words, it looked at Monica seriously, before slowly nodding. It was really taken aback by the determination of the pair. Sure, they were still far from the top as trainer and Pokemon, but they had insane potential. Most importantly, they had the traits it held most important. Monica was stunned for a moment. She was about to jump forward and pull a Pokeball out when she suddenly froze. Her actions, which went against her straightforward and brainless nature, caught the attention of Jessica and Elisa. She bowed her head and stood in place silently for a long time. A soft sigh suddenly echoed in the now silent cave, before Monica raised her head again. She gazed at Moltres deeply before smiling and grabbing onto Imbor's Pokeball tightly. This is not the end, you hear me? I will come back, me and Imbor will take you on again. And when I win, when I'm ready to take on this responsibility, I will come back for you. So don't you dare be captured by another trainer. She yelled, seemingly angry at the mere thought. Moltres seemed offended and began to flap its wings angrily as if saying, who do you take me for, some random Pidgey? Everyone smiled as they stared at the bickering duo. They really did suit each other. Rex silently approached Jessica. What about you? Ready to head over? He asked with a knowing smile. Yet to anyone else, it simply looked like a normal, kind and gentle smile. Elisa was the only one who seemed to know something wasn't right. Her instincts told her so. Jessica was silent for a moment. Before giggling slightly, she fixed her gaze on Rex's and mimicked his smile perfectly. We both know what I'm going to be doing, don't we, Rex? I will forfeit here and now. I have seen the power of the legendaries, and I think it would be best to refrain from giving us so much power. She said calmly. In the depths of Rex's eyes, slight surprise and shock were present. This girl is much more perceptive than I had thought. She will be scary in the future. He thought seriously. But then he looked at Monica and corrected himself. They will both be monsters. Alone they are very strong, and together, maybe they will give me a run for my money in the future, he thought with a chuckle. Eagerness floated up as he anticipated that day very much. Monica by now had calmed down almost completely, with only a few emotional fluctuations seen sparking up in her gaze from time to time. When she heard her sister's words, a slight change of expression occurred. Right, I guess that's also true. But it truly is a shame I can't go out with Moltres and torch my enemies with overwhelming might. She mumbled. But her words were caught by every present. They all stared at her with twitching lips. Their looks seemed to scream, "That's why we don't want to give two children so much power." Even Moltres shook its head in resignation. It seems that its future trainer was quite the thick-headed idiot. It had already acknowledged Monica, and it was only a matter of time now. The former was completely clueless about the looks she was receiving and simply nodded as if she was some sage understanding the inner workings of the universe. Soon enough, everyone exited the cave after bidding Moltres goodbye. Monica was the last to leave. A mixture of determination and unwillingness flashed through her eyes before stepping outside with steady and firm strides. Everyone nodded when they saw this. They were all happy that Monica had a goal. But when Elisa and Rex gazed at Jessica, a small sigh escaped their lips, causing both to look at each other. They both knew with a single gaze that what the other was thinking was the same. While Monica was hot-headed and impulsive, Jessica was cool as ice but tended to overthink things when in battle. She was like a computer trying to analyze every possibility, but before it could finish she had already lost the battle. Through Elisa, Rex understood that Jessica lost because she took too much time to decide on the best move. Even with her superb intellect, she always lost to Monica. He would have never arrived at the conclusion based on what she had exhibited so far. She was smart, cunning and a deep thinker. But she carried it too far in battles. Although she picked the most optimal moves possible for her Pokémon, which, if strung along in a short amount of time, would give her an overwhelming, borderline unobstructed victory. She was a freak of nature. Both of the sisters' weaknesses seemed to be the strength of the other person. Monica lacked calmness and Jessica lacked decisiveness. He had decided to have them train and battle together, against each other, but with the purpose of focusing on the actions of the other. If Monica could retain her cool in battle, with her natural battle instinct, she would be a phenom to be reckoned with. If Jessica had more decisiveness, with her overwhelming intellect, she would dominate. And together, they would be unstoppable. He shared all his thoughts with Elisa, who wholeheartedly agreed with his description and implementation of his training plan. She knew better than anyone how talented her sisters were. They were freaks, what they lacked had always been within reach of one another. As the two discussed and made alterations, with the help of Gaia here and there, they finally returned to Viridian City. The girls went to rest after a week of being in a cave. They did sleep outside in the comfort of tents that were even fitted with proper beds. They were naturally confused and questioned Rex about it. All he did was show them Mordred's ability to teleport. Yet, against Rex's expectations of shock or surprise, there were only blank stone faces staring back at him. They were already slightly numb to it after seeing Arcanine and Machamp. Yet they only got to see the small version of Mordred, since the 2-meter version is simply too scary for a pair of 14-year-old girls who have been sheltered their entire life. He was sure that if Big Mordred really appeared they would indeed be shocked, maybe even terrified. 3 weeks went by at a fast rate after that. During the time Rex was waiting for Mewtwo to send out its invitations, he was working on his secret organization. Not in too much depth, just rules, hierarchy and uniforms. The organization would be run by a meritocracy, where one's deeds and hard work earned them rewards and rank. As for uniforms, he chose ones that looked good but weren't really that ostentatious. They had hoodies, a black gas mask, walkie-talkie strapped to their left shoulder, grey shoulder pads with one bigger than the other, knee pads and a single arm guard on their left arm. Besides the protective gear, everything was black. The commanders would have a back bulletproof vest, and no hoodie. Their entire face was covered by a grey gas mask. And to differentiate them further, they had vibrant yellow stripes running down their arms and legs. This was to give them some scare factor when doing their missions. They would naturally stay out of the public eye and were tasked with solving anything that he either didn't have time for or couldn't do himself. Naturally, a robot made from Steelix's metal that he shed was set as the leader of each of the 100 squads. These Gaia robots were tasked to lead one squad each and act as the team leaders and supervisors. The metal as it appeared, was semi-organic, and the new metal was tougher than the last. So, his defense would naturally grow the longer he lived. A scary thought. This metal was smelted using Arcanine's fire since it was the only thing that could smelt it before turning it into arms and legs. The electronic component was all done by Gaia, who now had full control over the factory machinery in the basement of the building he bought. These robots were very strong and extremely durable. And most importantly, Gaia could control them by installing a small version of itself into them. Naturally, Gaia was unhackable, so the danger of this technology being stolen was zero. Even if the robot was captured or immobilized, a dissolving agent developed by Gaia after innumerable attempts was built into the robots that would dissolve the entire structure into nothingness in an instant. It was foolproof. The equipment used by the groups was comprised of guns, pokeballs, restraining forward/emergency equipment, communication equipment, scanning equipment, and a phone device placed on their forearm. The guns were registered with the League Government, Firearm Division, also called D13. They were in charge of controlling and tracking the use of firearms coming in and out of the country. Luckily, Giovanni came in handy once more. With the help of Gaia, he was able to use his pre-established influences to gather the required guns. Although he called in many favors and jeopardized some very unstable friendships with his request, they got what they needed. Giovanni wasn't really bothered by losing some contacts since the prospect of working with Rex would lead him towards the light. A light so warm and full of money and all he could want that a few people leaving didn't matter. Even then, Gaia also used blackmail by hacking into their accounts, finding dirt on the people who didn't feel like complying. Those who were squeaky clean had incriminating emails and documents planted in their email accounts or relevant physical places under their name. The far-reaching hands of Giovanni were surprising to Rex. He didn't care in the least that this was wrong. He preferred not using force and gently guiding them in the right direction like a big brother. But he didn't mind slapping the shit out of them if they didn't listen. The Pokemon used was EVs. To be precise, each group had 18 people in it, not including Gaia. Each group member had a different evolution of EV where possible. The typings that couldn't be covered by EVs were placed with adequate Pokemon to cover every typing. This was so that when they are fighting, the teams are never at a type disadvantage. There were also tactics and group attacks harnessing the power of all the Pokemon for one big attack that was being developed by Gaia at the moment. But that needed some buffering time since it would take a while. In the meantime, the groups had already been established, and training would commence. Giovanni owned a private airfield, which was currently being used as a temporary base of operations. It was more than big enough to do the required drills. It had mountains, lakes and flat lands perfect for terrain exercises. Even a small forest for protracted combat. It also allowed for the development of snipers, camouflage combat, and survival skills. Gaia pooled relevant drills and army training from every region's classified documents and implemented them into its training regime. After all, these grunts needed to be properly trained. He wouldn't have some useless lackeys do his work only to fail and pile on more headaches for him to have to them fix. They would also be trained in army tactics, developed their gun knowledge, and most importantly, study and understand every move and species of Pokémon in every region, including its typing and how to counter it using their group formation. By the time they finished, Rex wanted an army of unstoppable trainers /assassins ready and on standby. The airfield was a ways away from the city for private reasons. Giovanni wasn't exactly a model citizen then, so he needed his privacy to smuggle things in and out of the city. Mostly rare items procured from other regions in illegal quantities to then be sold. In any case, the airfield was being remodeled by the tireless robots Gaia built. They used the same infinite energy system that Steelix used, yet it was on a smaller scale. And although it was meant to be infinite, it still needed to be charged once a month. After all, Steelix used evolution energy to harness his infinite energy. Gaia couldn't do the same. But it was able to get something similar and efficient enough. So, the reconstruction would be done by in about a week or so. What would take months for humans to do, Gaia could do it many times faster since robots didn't need sleep. The restraining equipment was similar to a pokeball, yet its function was to temporarily catch humans. It was meant for quick extractions of targets, or to avoid casualties from friendlies or civilians by quickly catching them in the ball. This was also a function that Rex would make public for the use of rangers and the police force. It also had the effect of rapid healing, so as to provide emergency first aid to someone in need before transporting them to the hospital. This included a stasis function, where the body, if mortally injured, could be put into stasis to prolong their life before adequate treatment was provided. But it had a time limit of 30 minutes, and the ball would lose all its energy and must be recharged before further use. This ball would naturally be strictly regulated by Gaia so that it never got into the wrong hands. He also went the extra mile and added a function whereas, when it was illegally bought, or used for purposes besides what was stipulated, Gaia would know and would immediately take action if necessary. After all, it was like having extra eyes everywhere in a way. It might even lead to the location of black markets, criminal organizations and more by using this as bait. He would purposefully neglect to mention the surveillance placed on the ball for that purpose. He would use this technology to have the League turn a blind eye to his secret organization. The benefits obtained from this restraining /emergency ball would be massive. It would change everything. Many lives would be saved, and dozens of targets who would have escaped wouldn't be able to with this piece of technology. All on the condition that he was given the privilege of having his organization be unrestrained in any region under the control of the League. Communication equipment was simply the walkie-talkie on their shoulder that connected them to an encrypted channel that runs through Gaia. So, it would hear everything they said at all times. This was also untappable, and extremely secure. Subchannels were also in place for each group. Almost like a group chat with subchats for specific groups. So when someone wanted to say something to everyone in the whole organization, they could do so. But that was going to be strictly prohibited unless it was an emergency. Otherwise, if everyone talked on the general channel, not only would it potentially disrupt a group on a mission, maybe giving their location away, but if an emergency did actually arise, nobody would know about it. Scanning equipment were little drones they could throw into the air. They would move independently and scan an area before the group moved in. It had infrared vision to spot any heat signatures in wide open areas or in buildings. And finally, the phone device served as a small computer on their arm. They could instantly bring up the blueprint of a building by taking a picture of it. They could search for information on a target by similarly taking a picture of them, or simply find relevant information to their mission. All carryable equipment used micro-technology, meaning that they didn't carry guns in their hands or strapped to their bodies. There was a slot in their wrist that led to a button on their palms. Different buttons provided different things. All they needed from pokeballs, guns, drones or restraining balls were immediately provided directly to the hand. This removed the burdensome effort of reaching for stuff while also lessening the weight they needed to carry. Naturally, the training and equipment would take some time to make. Though it wouldn't take that long since it had already been in the works for some time. Ever since he got that factory, he had been planning to do something like this. So half of the equipment was already made. It was being overseen by 3 of Gaia's robots for protection and to make sure nothing went wrong in the manufacturing process. The training would take months, years maybe. After all, good, competent subordinates are not born, they're made. And that process is, unfortunately, longer than the equipment. He really contemplated releasing these people with Gaia robots. They were more effective and were battle-ready the moment they exited factory. But Gaia suggested against it. For the sole reason that having an army of humans, no matter how strong, would never be perceived as a threat to their lives. There, means the government and society. But if an army of robots walked along the street, it would incite distrust, fear and maybe even panic. After all, flesh and blood are more relatable than metal and circuits. Humans have a clear weakness in their lives, they feel pain, they can be corrupted, tortured and worked around. But robots are different, they are the perfect soldier and worker. They never complain, they're silent unless spoken to, incorruptible and don't feel pain. That is more than enough to strike fear into humans. After all, they feel threatened by anything that isn't under their control. Humans can manipulate other humans, but robots that cannot be commanded by anything or anyone besides the person with the authority is a scary thought. Rex was naturally aware of the psychology behind the human mind. They fear the unknown, and what they cannot control. This would not benefit his activities in any way. So, although he was a bit impatient, he had to wait for their training to be over. Thankfully, Gaia had optimized and synthesized the best training, taking into consideration every single individual's zone of perceived learning, competence in different fields and education level into the design training. This way it would maximize absorption and learning and cut down on wasted time. But humans are still human, they need breaks, rest, and motivation to persevere. He was currently standing on the roof of the 30-story building he had recently bought. It had just finished its remodeling to fit his necessities and was being continuously filled with furniture and people who had been poached from different fields. All having the best qualifications possible in their respective areas. From fashion to pokeball R&D, every floor specialized in something different that would boost sales and earn more money while benefiting the community and more importantly, Pokemon. The marketing team alone had a whole floor to themselves. After all, marketing decided if a product failed or succeeded. He also gave the PR team, public relations, their own floor. They would make sure that his image, and what the company did and said all fell within the margin of what's acceptable and preferred by society. Once again, Gaia was at the helm of everything. In every department, Gaia was the head, deciding what worked and what didn't. It had already achieved a deeper understanding of the human mind, its wants, its dislikes and its perverted, dark and twisted corners people refused to admit but had, better than any scientist or psychologist out there. Gaia knew them all and more importantly, knew how to identify and tailor the content to suit their preferences in a way where it seemed like nothing was out of place. This would not only maximize revenue but boost Symphony's image a dozen-fold instantly with every new product or action taken. Giovanni had long lost his marbles as he saw everything unfolding before him. He dropped his mug full of coffee on multiple occasions after listening to Gaia's suggestions. It was to the point where Gaia added liquid-proof carpet in his office on the top floor specifically for this purpose. Giovanni could only smile stiffly. It seems that this was also a way of telling him that this would be happening a lot in the future. He placed his palm on his chest to hear his heart beating. Genuine happiness filled his body. He had given his input in everything that was being done. At first, he didn't expect to have any of his ideas acknowledged since he was currently an outsider. But all of them had been accepted since he did have a genius-level intellect for business. They were obviously refined where possible by Gaia until a diamond was left in its place. He felt included and trusted in the short time since this all began. He had never really felt like this before. He was used to being despised and looked down on, causing him to fall upon fear-mongering to make them look at him differently. Even if it was fake, it was enough for him. So, to actually experience the real thing now was euphoric. Rex naturally understood Giovanni's character. Sure, he was a bad guy. Some of his actions do not have an explanation that would shed light on his misunderstood personality. He did some terrible stuff, but Rex always thought back to what Gaia once said. If a god is all good, then he is not all-powerful, and if he is all-powerful, he cannot be all good. Where there is light there must be darkness, one cannot live without the other. Which so-called saint didn't have a few skeletons in their closet away from the prying and critical eyes of society in order to preserve their image as high and mighty? The first sentence is from Einstein's formula. But he did know that Giovanni still had a lot of good qualities that he simply couldn't exhibit due to the former mask he donned. It both helped him yet also restricted him. Although he was able to feel fake emotions from his subordinates and partners, it helped him tide through his life. But at some point, he must have forgotten where the mask ended and where he began. Eventually ending up being a true, irredeemable villain. The wind howled about like a maddened giant as it slapped the droplets of water against everything in sight. A storm brewed and churned in the vast expanse of sky. Like a whirlpool, it sucked in the clouds like a hungry demon and began to corrupt them, turning them sinister and dark. Thunder rumbled like the stomach of a hungry beast, as sparks of yellow filtered through from time to time, showing the might of nature. Rex absolutely loved the rain. Heck, storms, in general, were the best weather in his opinion. Something about rain drenching you from head to toe, the soft embrace of rain on his face and the minuscule shiver that traveled down his spine shocking his sense along the way gave him a powerful sensation of being alive. He subconsciously raised his arms in a T-pose, tilting his head back and closing his eyes as if embracing the sky. He didn't care a single bit about his suit getting wet, he simply wanted to enjoy this wonderful sensation. The sound of leather shoes slapping the wet puddle-ridden concrete floor rang out on the silent roof, adding a new instrument to the orchestra nature itself concocted. From the weight, the time between steps, and the slight odor of cologne that came his way, he knew that Giovanni was here. A small drum, Rex said without changing his posture or moving an inch. His deep voice once again, momentarily added another sound to the culminating piece, further adding to his pleasure. A drum? Giovanni asked in confusion. How would he know that Rex was currently talking about the sound of his shoes and comparing it to the sound of a small drum? It was too far of a stretch, even for a smart man like him. Right. A drum, what have you come for? He asked, having no intention of explaining since the action of doing so would ruin the fragile inner peace he had built at this moment. His mind felt clear, full of great ideas. He felt Gaia somewhere in some corner as well. He even felt like it was working very hard at the moment, probably dealing with the millions of things it had to currently do, prepare and monitor. Giovanni stood there slightly stunned for a moment. He found it slightly funny the way Rex was standing, but he didn't have enough courage to laugh. Maybe this eccentric behavior was exclusive to battle freaks. He would never really know. He walked to the side without answering immediately, grabbed a chair soaked in water and sat down on it. He unbuttoned his suit jacket for comfort. There was no sign of being bothered by the rain in his movements. He too felt that rain was the best medicine for a weary heart. To rid the body of any heaviness or stress. Like the water could truly wash away all trouble plaguing a person. A rain to wash away all. Everything is set, the company is coming along incredibly smoothly. By the start of the league, we will have all the staff working at maximum efficiency ready for and awaiting your pending victory. As per your request, with the help of Gaia, we have intercepted all letters sent from Mewtwo to avoid any trouble in your quest of persuading him to join you. He said slowly while extending a hand out to his side, to better feel the rain hit his hand. Very good, I don't want anyone getting in the way. Mewtwo is currently in a very unstable mind space, anything can set him off. This is a very fragile situation. His intelligence is vastly superior to most other Pokémon, so the treatment you had him go through will be that much harder to overcome. Rex said in a very relaxed manner, as if he was talking in his sleep. There was not a single trace of anger or any other negative emotion present in his tone or visible on his appearance. Giovanni smiled out of embarrassment. Well, there's no point apologizing for it now, is there? He said simply. Absolutely, it wouldn't change anything, only waste breath. I have one small request for you to do. By chance, do you happen to know a Jesse, James and a talking moth? Rex asked with a small smile on his face. Giovanni was momentarily puzzled before the hazy images of three incompetent grunts filtered through. A trace of anger flashed through his eyes before they were quickly quelled. Yeah, those three good-for-nothings can't even catch a small Pikachu. Originally, I was interested in it because it showed signs of being abnormal, much like your Machamp in a way. Naturally, not to that level, but you probably get what I mean. But those three are absolutely trash. He began to rant as if he was talking to his psychologist. Why didn't you send someone more skilled? I'm sure that they would have been able to take a Pikachu from an incompetent trainer, right? Rex asked. Giovanni smiled and shook his head before sighing. I tried, but for some odd reason, the grunts I sent all had accidents on their way there. Not a single one was ever able to get close before the brat went off towards the next gym. The only three who were able to ever get close were those three idiots. I had no choice. He said helplessly. Confusion was evident in his tone. Rex chuckled soundlessly before very slightly opening his left eye for a moment to stare at the sky. It was like his look could pierce through the clouds and gaze upon something more. He closed his eye soon after. Some plot armor he has, huh? Lucky bastard. Seems God has his favorites. Or maybe it's something else. Fate maybe, he asked himself. There is no point in questioning it, it's something beyond the scope of our abilities to gaze into, let alone alter. Might as well give a perfunctory answer and move on, lest you spend more time on useless thoughts. Gaia suggested before returning to its work. Rex didn't bother to argue since there was no reason. Gaia was right. All he could say was, Ash had his good fortune. What were you going to do with them? He asked probingly. Giovanni didn't need to think for long and voiced his thoughts. I was going to have them continue to do their job. Who knows, they might succeed someday. Why? Do you wish to stop it? I know you've had one interaction with the kid, but it didn't seem very pleasant. He said cautiously. Rex was rather surprised at his words. You have quite the good intelligence department. Your words are correct, I don't much like the kid, he's dumb as a rock, ignorant about Pokemon, ironic considering he seems to love them so much, and above all else, his battling skills suck. The only redeemable quality about him is his sheer unpredictability. Rex voiced, the mere thought of it caused slight annoyance to surge from his chest. Not to mention his luck is dog's heat, he spat in his mind. But he was surprised, he initially wanted to have the trio stick with Ash, after all, they not only kept him busy and caused trouble for him which subsequently kept Ash away from him, but it also served as the kid's EXP generator. Who knows, he might even get weaker without them. In any case, he actually had a good impression of the trio. He even thought about training them and adding them to his organization, but on second thought, he decided to avoid tampering with God's favorite child too much. He might just get hit with a stray bolt of lightning out of nowhere and end up in front of that bearded old goat again. He was soon pulled back to reality before his stray thoughts wandered any more. Ah, that makes sense, although that kid is not even in the same realm of strength as you. He did pose an interesting challenge for me when he came to my gym, Giovanni said lightly. Oh. Do tell, Rex said with interest. Well, he didn't have the strength to make me use my full strength team. But he definitely has potential. A lot of it, I must add. His Charizard especially was quite the surprise. Incredibly powerful, but it didn't seem to obey any of Ash's commands, which I found odd. At first, it seemed totally uninterested in the fight until it saw my Machamp. Although not as powerful as yours, mine is still well trained and a true challenge to regular trainers. That lizard really gave me a run for my money. I only took it down after having Rapiria use Rock Throw. His other Pokemon included a Squirtle, Bulbasaur and his signature Pikachu. They were strong, the potential was there, and if they fully evolved, he would have breezed through my gym without much difficulty. I might have had to use my actual team to pose a challenge for him. But I usually make that optional for the challengers. Anyway, I agree with you that he is very unpredictable. Giovanni concluded with a reminiscing chuckle. Everything he said was within Rex's expectations. Since Mewtwo wasn't there when Ash challenged the gym, he would have had to do a normal battle. But what he found interesting was that he was actually able to win normally and not through some other unorthodox method as he did with some of the other gyms. Especially against Giovanni, who was the hardest gym leader in the region. He wasn't surprised about his Charizard either. That thing was monstrously strong for an ordinary Pokemon of its species. Yet it probably wouldn't win against Alan, although, with more training, a better diet and a Mega Stone, the possibilities were still there. In any case, he didn't have to do anything about those three Team Rocket idiots. Ash was slightly stronger than in canon currently as it seemed, but that can be attributed to his existence and therefore the butterfly effect as a consequence of his interaction with this world. Nothing to worry about though. If Ash got stronger he was all for it, if he got weaker he could only pity the eternal 10-year-old boy. But he doubted the latter would happen and was more inclined to believe in the former. He only hoped to interact with him less in the future so that his bad luck wouldn't contaminate him. So, what are you going to do now? Giovanni asked. 2 days from now I will be going to meet Mewtwo. After that, I'll wait for the League. There really isn't much else to do really. I cannot mobilize Wicked's forces at the moment since they are still not trained. So, all plans related to that must be put on hold for the time being. Rex said as he lowered his arms and gazed at the bustling city full of liveliness and vigor. Rex was just excited to get to the League. He truly wanted to experience the rush of battling before an audience. Just the thought alone made him giddy inside. Understandable, you don't have to worry about anything here, I have everything covered. Oh, before I forget, we have sent the plan for the restriction/emergency ball plans to the League along with our proposition. We hope to hear from them today. Would you like to attend the meeting? He asked casually. Do I have anything to do? He asked in his mind. None, Gaia responded immediately. Rex turned to Giovanni. I have nothing to do, so I'll gladly join you, he said with a smile. He walked down the stairs leading from the roof to the top floor and made his way to his office. His clothes were wet after all. Giovanni did the same. 5 minutes later, 2 men walked out in fresh black suits. They glanced at each other, nodded, and made their way down to the 15th floor where marketing was located. Although the marketing team wouldn't normally be in charge of dealing with this, they did want to listen in, just in case there were any requirements the League had before putting it for sale or anything they wished to add to the deal. The elevator door slid open with a ding, and as they walked forward a cacophony of sounds assaulted the eardrums of the two. Some were talking loudly, clearly discussing something that they couldn't agree on. Some were typing very fast, some were flipping through pages quickly trying to find something, and some were laughing as they had their break. But what they all had in common was that they froze upon seeing the appearance of the 2 men. The signature white-haired youth and short hair and stern-faced middle-aged man gave the whole floor a sense of pressure. They all knew about Giovanni's reputation, most were hesitant to work here because of it. But they were soon swayed by the monstrous paycheck they would receive. But the youngster next to them was someone they had never heard of. In all honesty, they didn't really respect this youth. He looked ignorant, clearly raised with a silver spoon, maybe a second-generation rich kid who had never worked a day in his life, leeching off his parents' money. They knew he had no background in business, no relevant degrees or anything of the sort. The one thing they knew was that he was participating in the League. They also knew that Gaia, the god they all respected, admired and idolized, worked for this kid. They couldn't understand how their almighty Gaia, beyond any other, couldn't lower themselves to work for this good-for-nothing. Staring at the crowd, Rex was naturally aware of the thoughts everyone had in their heads. After all, it was human nature to focus on the worst in people. He wasn't particularly affected by their thoughts either, as long as they remained thoughts. In any case, 1 month and a half from now, their thoughts will make a 180-degree turn. Like sheep, they will fall in line and all this negativity will fade, as if it never existed. Rex knew this, Gaia knew this, and Giovanni certainly knew this. That's why they never really bothered to change or prove themselves or their intentions. Actions would speak louder than words. Well, more specifically, the hysterical, impassioned screams of the crowd as they chanted Rex's names from the stands would change their minds. He calmly gazed at the temporary looks of discontent they tried to hide and smiled as if he was a blind man. That's it, guy. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel for more such videos. And also tell me in the comment section down below if you have any recommendations. Thanks for watching.